Something disgusting just happened in the British video games industry. It's hard to think of a better word than that. I feel disgusted by it. It is disgusting. So, a few weeks ago, I was contacted by a group of game developers at Rockstar North here in Edinburgh. They wanted to talk to me about a union that they just started to form in order to push for better working conditions at the studio as it approached this final push towards the release of Grand Theft Auto 6. It was and still is called the Rockstar Games Workers Union, and things were going pretty well from what I was hearing at that point. They'd recruited just over 10% of the Rockstar workforce here in the UK, which is a crucial milestone to hit, because that happens to be one of the criteria you need in this country in order to apply for what's called statutory recognition. That means even if the company doesn't want to voluntarily recognise your union, it doesn't matter. The government can force it to do so. Now, there's other criteria you need to hit as well, but that 10% membership, that's a biggie. So things were sounding hopeful, right? The union was actually just getting ready to announce its existence a bit more publicly. In fact, they were going to break that news on People Make Games. I was going to come up here, interview some of its members, talk to them about what they've been up to, about what they were planning to do next, and that was all going to happen a little bit later on this very month. And then, out of the blue, I received this email from one of its organisers. Hey Chris, as of yesterday, roughly 40 employees, specifically all members of the union, including the majority of the organising committee, have all been let go from Rockstar, without warning, without proper due course, or any reasonable process. These firings were picked up by Bloomberg later that same day, with Rockstar's parent company, Take-Two, claiming the employees had been fired for gross misconduct and for no other reason. Whereas the president of the Independent Workers' Union of Great Britain, which the Rockstar union members were all a part of, offered a very different perspective. Rockstar has just carried out one of the most blatant and ruthless acts of union busting in the history of the games industry. So what the fuck just happened? What gross misconduct could have possibly justified the immediate firing of dozens of workers in this way, with zero warning being offered beforehand? I've come to Edinburgh to meet those fired workers today and, well, to try and find out. It's currently a Thursday afternoon, just coming up to lunchtime, and around this corner across the road is the offices of Rockstar North, where you can see a demonstration is just starting to take place in which the fired union members have come together to rally support and to speak to their co-workers who remain at the studio.
I was hired as a junior in 2016, and for the past 9 years, I could not have hoped for a better group of colleagues, mentors, and most of all, friends. I grew from a graduate to a senior, every day living and breathing Rockstar's games, Rockstar's technology, and Rockstar's community. They became a part of me, and I of them. On Thursday, when I was fired without warning, without process, and without representation, I felt like a part had been ripped out of me. I was not even allowed to say goodbye. I was in complete shock. Shock that the company to which I had given so much of my labour, my passion, my creativity, my care, myself, would kick me out the door so aggressively.
Can you talk to me what's going on here? Why are you here today specifically?
So every day since we were fired last week, myself and many of my colleagues who were fired and many members from the company have been out at lunchtimes here, sort of having conversations, trying to tell our side of the story and make people aware of what's going on. And today is like the big day for that, where we're trying to sort of show that there's broad support from outside as well as from within the company. And this is our sort of big day to like make them think about what they've done to us.
The chant that's happening right now is say sorry, be nice. What's that in reference to?
Say sorry, be nice is a sort of Rockstar slogan. It has been for many, many years, but it does not seem like, at least in this instance, the company is interested in living by it.
Say sorry, be nice, stand up for workers' rights. Say sorry, be nice, stand up for workers' rights.
My friends are inside that building right there, and the one over there. But they are scared. They're scared for their jobs and they're scared to speak up, and I can't blame them for it. But I'm not, and clearly none of you here are either.
From your perspective, this is because you're a union organizer.
Well, it's hard to deny the connection, that all of us in the UK who were fired were union members. I think I've been vocal about my stance as well, so I was not surprised. I didn't expect anything like this to ever happen because of the strong union protections in the UK.
Yeah.
But I suppose I'm not surprised.
And by the sounds of it, you weren't a million miles away from statutory recognition when it happened, right? You'd hit 10% membership. The kind of end goal is in sight, at least, when this took place.
Yeah, we were very close, and I don't know if you know, but there's some new laws coming in 2026, the Workers' Rights Bill, which would have changed how the process is done, and it would have made things even easier. Like things were hard right now, but they would have changed the process. So, in my personal opinion, if this was gonna happen from management side, now was a good time before the next year.
And can you give me an idea of your own personal circumstances in this? What does being fired in this way mean for you as an individual?
If I have gross misconduct on my CV, on my resume for the rest of my life, that is a huge detriment to any future career prospects. Something important to notice as well is you feel shame to be kicked out of work this way. Like, all of us still want to be here, we want our jobs, we want to finish what we were working on, and now the internal shame you feel of, you know, having that gross misconduct with you forever, it's hard to explain.
Finally, could you talk to me about the sprout here? Because I feel like if I don't give context to our audience, they're going to see a lot of very angry Pikmin fans, and I don't think that's what's going on. So what does the sprout mean?
Yeah, it's the seedling emoji. It kind of became like our unofficial symbol of support for unionization. So we would see it sprouting up in chats, if you will, and kind of like the union, like it's sprouted by itself.
In your speech, you talked about how, you know, this wasn't just a normal job for you, it's a company that you devoted, both of you have devoted really significant amounts of time to. Could you just give me a bit more a sense of what that means, what it feels like to be fired from a company that you've both basically spent a decade at, and to then for it to end in this way?
It's safe to say that I think we've all gone through all the stages of grief. I think the thing I've felt...
I think there's more coming.
That's true, yeah. So far, but yeah, I think immediately in the meeting, it was just this profound sense of loss. Not only this career we've been building, but also the idea that we thought that we could build a better workplace, work directly with our workers, but also work directly with the management in doing that. And at every opportunity, I think we were trying to adhere to policy, try to do things in a way that doesn't ruffle feathers, that does things that, as far as we were concerned, aligned with the company's values. And then for this to happen, it raises a lot of questions about where our values are versus their values.
Obviously, to be fired immediately with gross misconduct as the reasoning, with no process attached to that, the threshold for that to happen to an employee in this country remains reasonably high. How confident are you guys in fighting this?
By the time I had left the doors, I had already been contacted by the IWGB legal team, and by 10 a.m. we were all in a Zoom call, discussing what had happened and what they were already sort of putting together, outlining what was going to happen next. So it immediately became clear we were in very, very good hands. It feels like, at the very least, procedures that should have legally been followed were not.
This here is from a worker who's still inside, working today. The energy, the excitement, that spark that made this place so special is now shattered. And I know I'm not the only one who feels this way right now. I know I'm not alone. And it's heartbreaking because right now, when we should be more united and focused on the project than ever, most of us are scared, hurt, and feel uncertain. This situation helps no one.
Can you very quickly describe what the relationship is between IWGB and the Rockstar Union for people who don't understand how that functions?
Yeah, of course. So the IWGB, the Independent Workers of Great Britain, is an independent trade union in the UK. We have a lot of different branches covering Uber drivers, delivery riders, foster carers, charity sector, and then also games. So within the game workers branch, we have a lot of affiliated workplaces. We just won our first recognition agreement with Zaum Studios, which I believe you covered.
Yes.
And we support a lot of other studios in the UK to fight on really clear issues. Pay, terms and conditions, overwork is often a big one. And we do what we can to support workers to unionise.
Now, of course, the details on what's happened here are still like worryingly, ridiculously limited. So we'll get around to that later on. But could you describe what the next steps are going to be? Like, IWGB is going to help the union through what comes after this. Like, what is that process going to look like? What are you after? What's the immediate goal?
The immediate goal here is very clear. It's the reinstatement of all 31 workers in the UK who've been fired and 3 workers in Toronto, who we know that our sister union in Canada are working to support. It's a reinstatement for those workers. It's full compensation for pay loss during this period. It's clear accountability for the way these dismissals have been handled, these very clear, unfair dismissals without procedure, without evidence. So clear accountability from the company and a commitment to following employment law in the UK in the future.
So today the appeals have been submitted in order to ask the company to do that voluntarily. Let's say that doesn't end up happening and Rockstar ignores those appeals, rejects them. What happens then?
What happens next is up to Rockstar. I just want to be really clear. Like, we've been outside the Take-Two offices this morning with a pre-breakfast rally. IWGB has turned out in like full support with people across our branches and with game developers from London who are outraged to see this happen. That's at the Take-Two offices today. You can see behind us just the strength of feeling and support, not just from the workers in this workplace, but from trade unions, from communities that are local and that are shocked by this behaviour. We've just submitted our legal claim. The ball is in their court to respond. We hope they'll resolve this with us amicably, right? This is in the end, this is a egregious and, to be honest, shocking. I have never seen a thing like this, not just in the game sector, but in UK trade union organising in the last 20 years. This is the moment where they can make that right. These are workers who just want to go back to work on a game that they love. If they don't, they've seen what they have to contend with. The force of public feeling is against them on this, and we'll continue to put pressure on them through legal, through demonstrations, speaking about what these workers have experienced.
My worry there is that Rockstar can still win even if the courts make them pay or if they offer, generous settlement amounts. That is still a price they're willing to pay to kill a union. If that is true and if that's what you're up against, how does the British Games Union movement ever succeed when you're up against that kind of financial heft?
I mean, this is what I was going to say is that I think we're in the fight of our lives, and the thing that really, I don't know, I guess when I go to bed at night, the thing that I always think about is that they'll have accounted for the press. They'll have accounted for bad press they'll get. They'll have accounted for delays to the game that will result from having fired 31 essential workers. They'll have accounted for the money they might have to pay to settle in court, and they've decided it's worth it. What they will never have accounted for, and something that I have never seen management account for, is the bonds that people feel in their work, their willingness to stand up for each other and fight, the strength that's in a collective of people willing to put themselves at risk, willing to put their voices in the mix and stand behind them. And they don't account for that because they don't understand it. They've never seen it. We haven't seen it in the games industry. They've never seen it in their boardrooms, and they're about to find out what that means. And I think that's something that they don't account for because they can't.
So some of the power that you're going to rely on here is not just the people standing outside there, but the workers that are still inside Rockstar that are equally furious about how their colleagues have just been treated.
100%. And the union's grown in the last week here, which is something incredible for me to see, like it's really, really encouraging. It's really amazing. People inside right now are afraid. They're afraid to talk about the union. They're afraid to talk about the facts of what's happened. But they're still joining us, and they're still putting their voice to this. We're also going to need the support of the public. We're going to need the support of the gaming community. I think this is a fight that affects all of us. Anyone who cares about not just GTA 6, but games as a whole.
Rockstar workers join the fight. Union memberships are rights. Rockstar workers join the fight.
Now, in the last few days, we have seen just a crumb of additional context for this gross misconduct charge via a new statement, this time coming from Rockstar itself, which claims that the employees were fired for, and I quote, distributing and discussing confidential information in a public forum. I spoke to the president of IWGB just before publishing this video, who told me he believes this is actually referring to a private Discord server the union's members were using alongside some folks from IWGB to organise their union activities, something he says should have been protected by British trade union legislation.
This looks like nothing more than union busting. There's a clear pattern as to the people who've been affected by this. The way they're calling it is like this platform. They weren't on these big open public forums kind of spouting secrets on the company. This was on a finite union Discord in which people were discussing their material conditions at the company, and they should be legally protected to do that. And it looks like they're essentially trying to decapitate the union when they see it's gathering momentum, when they see it's kind of passing this 10% threshold, when they can see it's picking up. And instead of actually thinking, oh, our workers are unionizing, clearly there's something we should engage with, they've just tried to steamroll it and completely gut the company of a union so they can continue with the behaviors that we've seen have been deeply problematic and toxic, and with the exact reason why workers started unionizing. I think what Rockstar have done is just proven out in the open what the workers were actually trying to counter behind closed doors. They've just done it. They're the ones who've been very public about this. The workers were actually being very respectful of confidentiality, doing this within these finite places. And Rockstar have just gone out in the open and showed the whole world exactly what kind of company they are without the workers having to do that.
We did, of course, ask Take-Two and Rockstar whether or not the public forum they'd referred to was this Discord server being used by union members and some IWGB employees, and they very quickly let us know they'd be making no further comment. Alright, the demonstration has just wrapped up, and I'm hit by a few things that I've seen today. First of all, these people are not going down without a fight, whether that's through Rockstar's own appeal process or perhaps, much more likely, an employment tribunal. But then there's the other side of this. To what extent has Rockstar already prepared for everything that has happened so far? The protests, the backlash, the potential legal disputes, the damages they may need to pay if it's found that they've broken the law, the settlement offers that might happen even before we get to that point. The worry is this is Rockstar doing exactly what it knows it can do, because it's a company that's about to release Grand Theft Auto 6 and rake in billions of dollars in the process. What price would this company be willing to pay to snuff out a union movement before it's truly got going, and to put the fear of God into anyone who may consider joining that kind of movement going forward? If that is the case, if that is the calculation that has already been made, this story cannot go untold. That's why we're going to be following whatever happens next and reporting on it in order to properly scrutinise the decisions made in that building over there and to hold the people involved to account. Listen, we're a small independent outlet. We don't have the largest pool of resources to draw upon in the world, but if we don't tell this story, I don't know what the fuck we're doing. We can't call ourselves People Make Games and then let something like this just pass us by. And so we'll see you again in some number of months, I imagine, to tell you the story of how the Rockstar Games Workers Union fought back against these firings. I don't know how the story is going to play out next, but we are going to tell it. Thank you for watching. If you'd like to support our work going forward, you can do so over at patreon.com/peoplemakegames. We offer all sorts of extra goodies over there, including exclusive videos, updates, and physical art prints. But most of all, more than anything else, you'll be directly funding our journalism and ensuring we can tell the sorts of stories the games industry is crying out for. Again, that's patreon.com/peoplemakegames. Cheers.